All right, we are live for the Monday edition of the Morning Check-In. And as always, looking forward to connecting. Hope everyone had a great weekend. And yeah, just got a lot of interesting stories that kind of swept under the radar. But then again, I'm going to try to bring it to the surface and share my 2 cents on it as well as get your thoughts as well. So as always, want to make sure I welcome any first-time viewers to the program. Let me know where you're watching from in the chat, and then when the phone lines, oh, look at me. Feel free when we get to the Q&A portion to let me know what your thoughts are, what you're keeping an eye on, what concerns you, what excites you, all the good things in between. So today we're going to cover everything from what's happening on Wall Street all the way down to Main Street and everything in between. And we haven't even been it hasn't even been 90 days completely into the new year, and there has been a lot of news around the banking sector. And it so happens to come at a time where there's a lot of excitement over digital assets, aka Bitcoin, Ethereum. And on top of that, a little news about gold. And then, of course, silver is following behind. But everything seems to be right on course for where this transition period that we're in. I guess it was originally designed to take us, and so I have my thoughts on that. And nothing is by accident. Everything is intentional. Don't be distracted. Don't be deceived. We are well on way to that digital world that they want us to live in, and it has a lot to do with the dismantling of the banking sector. Out with the old and in with the new. So we're going to talk about that and a couple other things. But as always, man, let me make sure everything is flowing smoothly. If you don't mind, hit that thumbs up button. Show your support for the channel. Hopefully more people have a chance to be notified. And if you have not, make sure you click the bell notification. And if you're on Rumble as well, make sure you guys hit that join tab so you can be notified when I go live, so you can chime in and get some real news in real time. Not that lame stream media stuff that's all, make you feel good, make you feel warm and fuzzy when the markets are green. But then again, when they're red, they tell you that this is a great time to buy the dip when I'm referring to the legacy system. So, all right, man, we're going to have a good time. I have I got 10, 12 tabs open. And I know it's the last couple of live streams. I find myself getting carried away in just free thought, because I'll be reading something and then a thought come to mind, and I just try to add on to it, just running what could be possible scenarios on things that we can face in the days ahead. And so I want to try to contain myself as best as I can. But as always, I have so much fun just, pouring it out as far as what I consider to be little nuggets of wisdom here and there. That I look up and it's like almost an hour, and I never really got to the gist of what I was trying to get to. So I'm gonna try my best to stay on course. So feel free to help me along in the chat. If I start drifting too far, let me know, Mike, to reel it in, and I'll try to reel it back in. But all right, we got Carlos checking in, we got Ed checking in, we got Militia checking in from Minneapolis, Minnesota. Appreciate you. We got New Queen of Rap checking in as well. This is going to be a very interesting month. Yes, you are 100% correct. This is going to be an interesting month, and it has a lot to do. Let me just start off with this. Just as I was putting things together, I realized that literally the way that things are being set up, that they're doing it so that people can be trapped in the system, contained within the system. And the system I'm referring to is the banking structure. And so, did you know that there's been 222 bank closures within the last 75 days, less than 90 days? I bet you didn't know that. And neither did I until this article popped up. And I'm like, okay, I'm sure my people would love to know the fact that banks are closing rapidly, on top of the threat of more banks being in danger of basically going belly up. And so the great merger, or the banking contagion that is designed to be consolidated into the hands of the bigger banks, is well underway. And while they're doing that in the natural world, digitally, they're trying to condition people and excite people about the transition into the digital world, i.e., with online banking is one of the premises. And then what is the ultimate, I guess, attention getter happens to be what's happening with Bitcoin right now. And so with the world drowning in debt, our country is $34.5 trillion in debt. We are right where they, meaning the people who are trying to orchestrate this transition, knew where we would be at around this time frame. And the reason I mention that is simply, let me just share with you a visual aid, and I'm going backwards, but I might as well get this out. Let me just share with you what was already predicted. Get ready for a world currency. And guess who and how many people are now referring to Bitcoin as a world currency? And so, according to this cover here, it was a coin, the Phoenix. It was designed to be something that was controlled by governments. But then again, it doesn't necessarily have to be controlled by governments just because the people themselves have opted in to the narrative that it's decentralized, it's for the people, no government can shut it down. Doesn't this help the banking sector? Doesn't this help divert attention off of the failed centrally controlled monetary structure that's already in play? And even though it presents, I'm referring to Bitcoin, even though it presents a way of out of the system, it's still solely in digits. At the same time, they want us to transition to a solely digital world. What a great coincidence. Or who knows? I could be wrong, but it's just too much stuff feels like it's flowing too smooth for me to actually sit up here and say, Bitcoin is going to do this and Bitcoin is going to do that. Well, when this at the same time, the mainstream media is downplaying the historical rally of gold, given that the Federal Reserve note, this instrument right here, is at an all-time historical low when you measure it in gold. If gold is and has always been a standard, this paper here is underperforming drastically with gold being at 2170 or whatever it is now. Okay, that's enough for the introduction. Anyway, so hope everyone's doing well, man. As I mentioned, hit that thumbs up button. We're gonna have a good little live stream today. I promise you that I'm gonna deliver as best as I can to get you to think outside the box and to get you questioning everything, regardless of how good it might feel or regardless of how your portfolio might be doing. Yeah, don't fall for the booby trap. Okay, but before I get started, let's get started with some good news. I want to start every single live stream in the morning focusing on the good news, well beyond the events in the natural, distraction, diversion, taxes, and things like that. Let's put our attention where I believe it should be most, where we get the most juice, most energy, most hope from, and it comes from a breaking down of key components of the Word of God in the morning to get your day started. So let me deposit into your spiritual bank account this morning. And I got a doozy here. I got a good one here. This is called Trust in Provision for March 11th. This is the daily devotional for the day. I'm going to run through this real quick. And as always, the goal is to hopefully bless you this morning with something to really focus on and meditate on outside of all the distractions that come your way throughout the day. And simply put here, it says, this is from Matthew 6:31 and 32, the New King James Version. It says, therefore, do not worry, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or what shall we wear? For after all these things the Gentiles seek. For your heavenly Father knows that you need all these things. My Father knows what I need, is what I'm getting at. All right, real quick here, I'll give you some of the gist of this devotion. It says, in the bustling markets and along with crowded streets, the question lingers in the air. Quote, what will we have? What will we live? How will we live? The world toils and spins in a ceaseless chase for provision. Yet in the gentle voice of our shepherd, we hear a different call, one that speaks to the rest of our souls and certainty of our care. Jesus addresses the heart of human anxiety, our basic needs. His words come as a soothing balm. Do not worry. Quote, it is not a command without understanding, but an invitation into a life of faith and trust. For worry is the language of uncertainty, and faith speaks with a assurance of a father's knowledge and care. So let me repeat that. For worry is the language of uncertainty, and faith speaks with the assurance of a father's knowledge and care. It says our Heavenly Father is intimately aware of our needs. Where the world seeks, He provides. It says whether others toil, He offers rest. This passage beckons on us to look above our circumstances and trust in the one who clothes the lilies and feeds the birds. Are we not of more value than these? It says as we enter this day, let us set aside the concerns that weigh us down. Let us walk in the peace that comes from knowing our Father's care is sure, His provision sufficient, and His attention unwavering. And the last thought here is a little bit of a prayer. And if you want to pray this prayer with me, have at it. It says, Lord, help me to entrust my needs to you, to live in the assurance of your care, and to rest in the peace that you provide. Teach me to seek your kingdom above all else, confident that you will supply all my needs according to your riches in glory. Amen. All right. All right. Hopefully that right there was a blessing to you, because it definitely charged my spiritual batteries this morning. Okay. Let's get into some interesting things here. But before I do that, as always, I want to continue to remind people, hit that thumbs up button, show your support for the channel. And before I do that, I got to make sure I big up my people who are a partner with the channel, man, who gives everybody here a chance to prepare for whatever is coming our way. And that being emergency preparedness. So if you have not, make sure you guys visit forpatriots.com/RTD. Link is in the description. And what that provides you an opportunity to do is see this deal pages here, which changes often. And so here you can get a variety of necessary emergency tools. You have a heated sleeping bag. We have plant-based protein survival food kit here. We have all types of Patriot powder blend. We have electrical devices. And also you can get their 1-year supply of food at your disposal to keep you, to help you get your calorie game up. So that's an option for you guys as well. And also energy, solar power. Make sure you guys prepare for whatever comes your way, blackout, darkout, whatever. Make sure you got your solar power and everything in between. You'll be prepared slightly for whatever's coming. But once again, if you want to find out more, go to forpatriots.com/RTD. Link is in the description. And then on another note here, financial preparedness, wealth preservation comes in real tangible assets that only can be found in or from the ground. And so here you got the deals at GSM. And so if you guys are interested, right now we got silver at $24.41. That is up $1.50 or so from the last time we spoke, or about a week ago. So it's definitely going to move, which is an indication that the Federal Reserve note, aka fiat, is failing. And so protect yourself, preserve yourself. Here's a chance to get some silver or copper if you're interested. And they're about $2 or $3 above spot. So that's probably one of the best deals that I've seen thus far. So if you're interested in finding out more, click the link in the description, rethinkingthedollar.com/GSM. It'll take you here where you can get a variety of items that might tickle your fancy and preserve your wealth. And then on another note here, for my people who are new to the community, man, I want to encourage you of the opportunity to get a hold of the crisis reports. And so some outside the box thinking, which gives you something to really ponder in this transition period, can be found on this site here. Link is in the description. And so if you see here, there's a variety of just things here that really challenge your thought process. It goes against the mainstream narrative, and it really gets you wondering what's going on here. And one of the most popular ones, it says central bank digital currencies, total control and the end of privacy. So a lot of interesting things here for those who are interested, as well as a lot of speculative opportunities that can be of use to a lot of people. So just something worth checking out if you guys are interested. So have at it. Links in the description. Okay, it's going to be good, man. It's going to be a good one. It's going to be a good one. So we are being lulled to sleep, digitally speaking, with, of course, Bitcoin being on every mainstream channel. Even we got former President Trump out here now calling it a currency and referring to it being a world currency. And once again, we're in a political season. Political theater, as I call it, the left versus right, Republican versus Democrats, all, left wing, right wing, all on the same bird, heading the same direction. And so as I started off with my people coming in, we're right where they want us to be. Like, this depiction here of a world currency. And even though, as I mentioned, this is from The Economist, which the Rothschilds and everybody else that predicts the future that they're creating for us, it's on a pile of burning currencies. And when we're witnessing Bitcoin rise out of the ashes, in a sense, as being called a world currency, or the maximalists wanting this to be a world currency, it's just something you should pay attention to. Don't be all hunky-dory, just looking at your bag saying, oh, I'm getting richer. But yet you're getting richer in the same thing that it's being priced in. It's dying. So is it really rich, or is this just a temporary layover until we get to their end goal, of which I got an article here that talks about their end goal. And it has to do with the digital transition, distributed ledger technology, yada, yada, yada. So I'm not about to sit up here and bash, Bitcoin entirely, because it can be a good tool to use to, get in and then get some real world items. But don't fall into the trap of thinking that this is all like, Satoshi Nakamoto, this guy is saving us, because Satoshi Nakamoto is definitely giving a lifeline and giving the government some cover right now on these fiat currencies that's failing. So anyway, my point is, we're not here by accident. Okay, I'll leave it to that. And just to show you that we're not here by accident, just listen to this right here, and let me know like what you hear out of this, and we'll talk a little more.
People were going crazy for these leakers. You probably were too. Everybody was. I have every friend I have has called me for a pair of sneakers. So it just took off. And I noticed that so many of them were paid for with this with the new currency. And it is that. It's a new cryptocurrency. And I couldn't believe the amount. And I'm saying, this thing has really, and other things I do, people are using it. And, I would be, I'm very much a traditionalist. I like staying with the dollar. You know that from when I was there. It's make the dollar the choice. I hate when countries go off the dollar. I would not allow countries to go off the dollar, because when we lose that standard, that will be like losing a revolutionary war. That will be a hit to our country, just like losing a war. And we can't let that happen. And too many countries now are fighting to get off the dollar. People are going crazy for these things.
The dollar. Okay, the dollar in the terms of a fiat liability issued out of nothing, backed by nothing from the Federal Reserve, is already null and void overall. Just look at gold. Gold is responding all-time high in all fiat currencies. So the Federal Reserve petrodollar standard is pretty much, for the most part, null and void. And as of now, it's just still floating along because it is the de facto. But then again, with the price of gold right now indicating where people are ultimately trying to run to for protection, lets me know that the dollar's already done. But just, whole point of that was that Trump, he made 1,000 pair of shoes and he's accepting cryptocurrency, and he was referring to Bitcoin there, and he called it a currency, and, kind of hinting at the fact that that's what people, are choosing to use. So I mentioned that just because here we are now, fiat's burning. We had, former president and current presidential candidate talking about a new currency, but he would prefer to have the dollar, even though the dollar is burning, is trash. Overall, you still can spend it, but then again, nations aren't willing to accept or run to lend us currency by buying treasuries and bonds. So, and if the dollar is, for the most part, is a derivative of our bond debt market, that ain't really hot right now. So our currency is not really all that hot. You get my point. But anyway, real quick, we're going to get into this because this all ties into the banking sector and how, while everyone's being concerned with this currency, the banks are now trying to trap you and I inside of it, bit by bit, forcing us to go digital. Okay, I'm everywhere right now. But while I'm at it now, let me just get to some market activity. I like to tend to start off just looking at some market activity here. Give me a second here so I can make sure I get everything lined up according to how I wanted to look on the screen here. Let me get myself here. Okay, so you guys can see what I see. So as of right now, this is where we at this morning at 10:22. I got to get going. So right now, gold is in the green. We're at $2,179. That is we're in all-time high territory when you measure it in a dying fiat currency. And so has this already put it into the debt version of our currency? I believe so. It's very telling. And this is just gold. Silver, the people's money, hasn't even really responded in the way that it will. And so as of right now, we're nowhere near adjusted for inflation, an all-time high here. We got $48 back in 1980. We got $49 back in 2011, and here we are at $24. So the system is still going to float along. We're still going to have this type of calm in a sense until $24 is broken and we shoot past 50. When we get past 50, the financial system as we know it will no longer be in existence. So I'm not in a rush. I'm not in a rush at all. Anyway, okay. What else we got here? Let's look at, of course, you got to look at the crypto market. That's where attention is being drawn to. And so as of right now, a lot of green activity here. Then most notable here, Bitcoin, 322, all-time high for Bitcoin. The new currency that our former President Trump mentions, as well as the world currency that maximalists will love to see. Okay. And then we have Ethereum also making closer. It's approaching its all-time high, but it's at 4,041. So those are the two head honchos right now. And a lot of people, including myself, I recognize opportunity. So I do dip and dabble because it's a good way to transition yourself into something physical and real. And so here you guys can see what the current equity market is doing right now. It looks like Apple is doing its thing. Nvidia's down about a point. And so we have the financial sector is a little bit in the red. We have banks. Banks. This is what we're going to get into. Banks are not doing that good, people. And so let's get right into it, man. This is a story of the day. This is the story of the day. I don't want to waste your time on this one. Here we have an interesting story that came out a couple days ago. But then again, you wouldn't have known about it apart from people such as myself bringing it to your attention. This is what they don't want you to pay attention to. Wells Fargo, Bank of America, and PNC among U.S. banks that closed 222 branches in just 2 months this year, setting America on course for a grim total of 1,300 by the end of 2024. So we have banks deliberately. So these publicly traded companies, these globally systemic important banks, they're deliberately closing branches, cutting costs, as well as steering customers towards digital transactions, because that's what everybody seems to do, because a lot of people don't use cash. And so it says U.S. banks are increasingly confident consumers are willing to travel further. It says rural areas are becoming less populated and banks seek to dominate cities. Okay, so let me give you a rundown. It says the closures reported by the federal regulators of the Office of Comptroller of Currency in January and February are reflective of a broader trend. Banks are growing increasingly confident in the capabilities of online banking, according to Steve Ryder, the founder and president of whatever. It says that confidence can lead to a significant savings, since an average freestanding bank branch costs about $2.6 million a year. So in just 2 months, Bank of America shut 41 closures, might have saved it almost $100 million. So saving funds on their end is a part of their business strategy. They are allowed to buy back more shares, or executives are able to get a bigger bonus for cutting cost. And don't mention they're closing banks, so that could be hundreds of people out of jobs. No worry. And so here's a list of the banks. Bank of America 41, U.S. Bank 32, Citizens Bank 21, First Republic Bank 20, PNC 18, Wells Fargo 18, Capital One 11, Key Bank 10, Bank T Bank 10, Chase 5, Fulton Bank, Huntington, and 6 others. This is just within the first 2 months of 2024. And at this current pace, they're saying that they can see approximately 1,300 total by the end of this year. And so the other side of this equation, which people may not be really considering, is that less access to banks means less access to ATM and actual person-to-person teller activity. Therefore, that cuts off and restricts your ability to go get cash when you want to. And so if you have to drive a little bit of a distance to go get some cash, if you needed it, the chance of you going is very unlikely, because you would just like, what's the point of going to get cash? I'll just swipe my card, or I'll just do online, or do tap and pay, or do Zelle, or put it on something like that. And so voila, bit by bit, it's being sold as a convenient and a cost saver for them. But then again, they're touting the trend of consumer spending being online and more digital, to the need of closing physical brick and mortar banks, which is only natural. It's going to evolve, but it limits your access to cash. At the same time, the world's going digital, and that's kind of where they want us to go. So we have banks being deliberately closed to cut costs, and then we have banks basically faltering due to being underwater right now in debt. So all these same banks I just listed, they are still, not off the hook as far as the liabilities on their balance sheets, which at this current moment, due to the higher interest rate environment we're in right now, they're taking losses. And their losses is piling up a lot higher and greater than their current assets, which is our deposits. So something's going to give, and it's going to be very unpleasant. But it doesn't help that as of today, the BTFP is closed. Like, literally they close it. It's like it's done for now. So all the loans taken out beforehand are still good, but then they're not going to renew them or issue any new loans. So what do you think is going to happen next to this month? Bank distress like never before. At the same time, they're willingly closing down banks. Okay. And if that's not good enough, let's just listen to, someone else who happens to know exactly how and why they're doing it.
There will be bank failures, but this is not the big banks. If you look at the very big banks, it's not a first-order issue for any of the very large banks. It's more, smaller and medium-sized banks that have these issues. We're working with them. We're getting through it. I think it's manageable is the word I would use, but it's a very active thing for us and the other regulators, and it will be for some time.
Thank you.
All right, so there you have it. There will be bank failures. There will be bank failures. It won't be the big boys. It'll be the small boys. It'll be the small banks, which is the community banks, things of that nature. So banks closing, banks failing. What are they doing? This is a strategic rebranding, reshuffling of the financial pipeline, and the lifeline, or the blood, the life source for this particular pipeline I'm referring to happens to be in the currency. And so, do you think so? On top of this same hearing, which was on Thursday, Senator Loomis asked Jerome Powell about the CBDC process and where we're at, and she was saying that, for the sake of giving calm to the public, because the public is concerned that CBDCs are coming, and can you, Jerome Powell, can you guys authorize a CBDC without congressional approval? He's like, well, no, we really can't do that without congressional approval. I'm like, okay, well, duh. You know what I'm saying? Like right now, everything is fine. Everything is hunky dory according to them. So you don't necessarily need to issue a CBDC at this current moment. But then again, you better believe, and I know that they are already prepared for what's coming, because they've already done the test run, the test trial. They did the digital dollar project. They did the collaboration between the big banks as well as the Federal Reserve and things of that nature. So you better believe they're ready. But they need an event. They need an event like no other event in history to be able to pull something off, whether it be them doing it directly or Congress basically begging Jerome Powell to do something. We need to get funds to the people. You see this setup that's underway right now? And it doesn't stop there. Here, this is another story that you may not have seen. You might have seen it. My guess would be you probably did it, because this could have flew under the radar. This was on March 7th. This was last Thursday, and I meant to do a video, but I couldn't get to it. But just to give you an idea of where we're at, this is around the same time Jerome Powell gave his speech. It says, FDIC says problem bank list grew by 8 lenders last quarter. The problem bank list. So listen to this. FDIC said the number of lenders with financial, operational, or managerial risk rose by 8 to 52. 52 banks, 52 institutions, people, last 3 months of 2023. We didn't know about this. So unless you actually go to the FDIC page and you look at their list of banks that are in trouble, there's a list. I check it every blue moon of banks that were bought, merged with other banks. 8 of the 52 last 3 quarters. So the FDIC said on Thursday that it's confidential. That it's confidential. Mind you, this is not public information here. Their problem bank list now included 1.1% of institutions overseas, and that the total assets held by those firms increased by 12.8 billion last quarter to 66.33. So listen to this. The total assets held, which are the deposits. So those banks that had issues, they were just merged into other banks, and they're considered as assets held, which increased in the smaller hands of fewer banks. Real quick, it says, although the number of firms on the FDIC list remains relatively low compared to the historical highs, it continues as an increasing trend that started early last year. Right after March, the March banking run. So what this is saying, that ever since March of last year, there's been an increase problem bank list that has been confidential, that they've been adding banks to this list. And so they give banks an option of going to the BTFP throughout all last year. And so now today it's cut off, but this list is still growing. These problem banks here, which are a problem, they're still growing. So how will they resolve this? What are they going to do will be the question. And my guess would be, I will submit to you that they're going to let some things start failing intentionally, causing some panic and some concern. And I don't see Jerome Powell really racing to cut rates to try to reinflate the banking bubble, because I'd imagine at this point they're behind in their timing. And so they will let some banks fall, because there's not enough pain yet in the economy, the way that they would really warrant a need to cut. So don't suspect a cut in June like, the people are forecasting. Just something to think about. But this is a lot of information here. It says here, according to the FDIC, banks are placed on a problem bank list based on a key risk measure known as CAMELS. I'm not sure what CAMELS is. It says the score is based on a 1 through 5 scale, with 5 being the worst. Banks that are included have a score of 4 or 5. So 4 or 5 to me is basically saying that they are probably a day or two or a week away of not having enough liquidity and they are capable of being, being basically having a bank run, which would trigger a domino effect of other banks also having some bank runs as well. And so those 8 banks that were just added is what he's referring to here, what they're referring to here. But here's the last little bit. It says, more generally, the FDIC said its quarterly banking profile on Thursday that 4,587 banks it supervises are financially strong as a group. So 4,587 banks that are under that FDIC window of protection, 250,000, yada, yada, yada. And it says here, the regulator said the industry's net operating revenue hit $1 trillion mark for the first time. So the industry, and it's looking at the entire industry, not just like the current banks, but the entire industry. The strongest banks happen to be the GSIBs, and so they're not really, in my opinion, giving much credence to the problems that these smaller banks are probably experiencing right now due to the commercial real estate stuff like that. But they threw out a number of saying 1 trillion, operating revenue, as if like that's, a bonus, but it's really more so revenue probably from the big boys rather than the underwater smaller boys. And so 4,587 total FDIC banks right now. And the problem banking list is growing. At the same time, they're shutting down banks. So this whirlwind of this banking fiasco that's underway, it won't end pretty. And who will be the primary casualties of this banking transition? The depositors, people who have their finances solely dependent in the hands of or on the ledgers of these banks. And so this is how they get us to the point where the people will run towards a rebranded version of our currency, which will ultimately just be the transferring of the current commercial bank ledger of the loans taken out that allows them to issue these and print the offshoots of these notes here onto a new ledger, which is a modernized version using the Bitcoin blockchain technology, which is just more advanced. It's more advanced and more controllable. And if you don't believe me, just look at what other nations are doing. And I'm going to get to this article right here, because you can learn a lot about what is being built just by looking at the other nations that are further ahead, because the U.S. will be the last nation to issue some form of a rebranded currency. And just look at this one here. This is a doozy. I'm sure you haven't seen this one. It says here, Hong Kong launches wholesale CBDC project to support tokenization. And then look at that next one, tokenized deposits. A rebranding of how banking will be done. So real quick here, this is what's being built out. And you mean to tell me the number one central bank in the world don't have something already prepared? Okay. It says, today, Hong Kong Monetary Authority announced the launch of Project Ensemble, a new wholesale central bank digital currency. Wholesale central bank digital currency meaning it's like the banking version of a wholesale currency, which allow banks to interact with one another, just the banking side. It says wholesale CBDC will enable interbank settlement for tokenized commercial bank money. Tokenized deposits is what it's getting at. So just to give you an idea as what that looks like. I'll click on this link here and it gives more information. It says, could the proposed CFTC digital asset taxonomy become a global blueprint? Tokenized deposits. Increasingly, tokenized deposits or deposits tokens are viewed as an alternative to stable coins or a retail CBDC, preserving the two-tier banking system. Two-tier, wholesale and retail. It says payments with tokenized deposits can be functionally more complex compared to stable coins and CBDC. When someone pays using a bank token, there is additionally a movement in conventional money. And so to go back here, so as you can see, tokenized deposits is basically, it's the tokenization of deposits funds at individual banks. And so according to this here, what I'm about to get to is they have developed and built out and testing how to take current deposits on their ledgers, tokenizing them, basically put them, transition to a new form of a ledger. And then they are talking about how they're going to maneuver these tokens amongst themselves and be able to swap them out amongst banks and then redeem them on the other end to where they can either burn those tokens to make them disappear once the transaction is complete, or they can figure out how they're going to, build up a reserve of, say bank A's tokens that might exist on bank B's ledger. And so they'll know who the tokens belong to. So it's just another way of taking the blockchain digital ledger technology that is being built out by the crypto space, and they have incorporated into their coffers. And these tokens can also be labeled as and compared to CBDCs because they're all bank driven, but then again, they're commercial bank driven. But it's good to say this is just one model of another that might come about. Real quick here, and I won't bore you anymore. It says, with the whole CBDC sandbox will be used to trial the settlement of tokenization use cases. It says the tokenized green bonds, so they're building products on top of these. But it says payments will involve tokenized deposits. Other applications could include carbon credits, tokenized aircraft instruments, electric vehicle charging stations, electronic billing of lading, and treasury management. So, long story short here, this is a further development of this digital transition, tokenizing deposits. So the banks are building this out in collaboration with the central bank's permission and things of that nature. So you can see how the ultimate agenda of taking people solely digital is well underway. And if the banks are being closed down, banks are faltering, it'll only incentivize any type of political body, whether it be the Hong Kong, president or Congress here, to eventually be forced to jump on board. Because if your options are being cut off, if you can't go to the bank because the commercial banks are closing down and or failing, which limits your ability to actually go get physical cash, the only financial transactions you can actually perform will be on some debit card or some bank activity on your phone. And if that's all you have, then that in and of itself is furthering the digital trap that we're already in. So as you guys can see, we're well underway to where they wanted us initially. So as the fiscal and monetary collision takes place, as I always mention, fiscal debt with monetization of our debt comes to collision course. We're right where they want us. And the banks are still in control. The banks are still in control because they have everybody's funds trapped in there. So you can understand why it'd be important to really get outside the system. And so it says CBDCs are illegal. Education is blah, 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 blah. It says it's must. CBDCs are illegal 100%. But I don't think the legality of it right now matters because it's being built out for a use case. They're not building all this just for fun. They're building it so that they can remain in control of the financial system after some event occurs. So watch this. When the banks are finally done away with, meaning that 4,587 FDIC banks have to make a pivot in order to stay in business, because the dollar and the treasury market is going to be done away with. That the debt bubble, when it bursts, they're going to need some options. They're going to need some solutions. And their solution is going to be something that they created. So it's illegal now, and you need congressional approval. But after stuff hits the fan, and every single American and beyond funds are no longer available to them because of a bail-in or just blackout or whatever, they're going to have the solution ready for you. So whether you want it or not, at some point within the next, say, 12, 24 months, you better believe after this presidential cycle, CBDC will become a common household topic, whether it's issued or not through a UBI or through some type of stimulus program after an event. People will accept the CBDC. And it's good to say that, based upon the way banking is done now, a CBDC could be seamlessly rolled in on the back end and everything look the same on the front end as far as the user interface of you just tapping, swiping, and paying, you not even knowing. So that's what it is. But my whole point is, if you know it's coming, you probably want to have as minimum exposure to losing what will be the last little bit of your property, which is this here. So at the same time, the world's running from this. It's like, okay, being able to transact hand to hand in the form of cash or through some barter system is going to be your last line of defense, financially speaking. So wealth preservation through metals, and I look as the way of actually appreciating, growing, and gaining off of this transition could be within the crypto space. So it's that, like, you can sit out and not do nothing, or you can play the game along with them, knowing that they're wanting this to inflate away. They're using crypto as a way to inflate away and avoid a hyperinflationary dollar crises. So it's more so, what is your strategy and how you plan it? So Anyway, it says, T-Roy says, just another layer added to the top of a shaky system. Yeah, 100%, man. I mean, like, this has all been planned out for decades. They knew exactly where we would be at, and that's why I mentioned, for those who might just be coming in, the Economist cover told us, the events that will be underway, burning fiat, and fiat is ultimately debt. And if debt is coming to a halt the way that it's been done before, unbacked fiat notes, they're distracting us with that coin, that currency around the neck. And after all this blows through, the point of this Economist cover was that the central controlling authorities would then have a say-so over the monetary system, leading to that interoperability, furthering us towards that one world currency. It's been built out through this tokenization of deposits, the potential of a CBDCs, which will be in the U.S. last, and all the other things that are on top of it. So they're going to tokenize every aspect of your life. They've already made that clear. Everything will be on a blockchain in some capacity. And the question is, it won't be an open public ledger. It will be a private ledger that will be held by the same people control the system now. That's just my opinion. That's just my guess. But anyway, that's all she wrote for this morning, man. Yeah, very, very exciting times, man. And as I started off earlier, man, just talking about, provision. Where does your provision ultimately come from? Who is your source? If Christ isn't your source, it'll be very easy to fall into the doom and gloom of the events unfolding around us with, the enemy, those forces that are controlling this transition, trying to trap, steal, kill, and destroy. Ultimately speaking, they have already stolen our lifeline through taxation and inflation. And so once again, once they control the actual entry points and exit points, and there's no way of getting out, i.e. no cash to run to, they will have accomplished their agenda. But then again, if you know ahead of time, you can enjoy the current present moment. But then again, don't put your trust and your hope in the system, because it's already failing in real time, people. All right, then. That's all she wrote. Yeah, just want to check in for this morning check-in. Hopefully you were informed and brought up to speed on some things happening in real time. And if you haven't, hit that thumbs up button, show your support for the channel. And then also, because there's a lot of key information shared here, I would encourage you to take this video, share it with others, give them something to think about so they'll be aware. The worst thing I would want to have is people not being informed and just not being in tune with what's really going on and being caught up in the lies and all the distractions and not really realizing that, you better get physical, real. Don't get sucked into this digital computer world solely. They want to take you towards a digital world. So we were called to have dominion in the natural realm on this physical sphere that we're standing on now, not to be caught up in AR and virtual reality and digital currencies. And anyway, I can go on and on and on, but I'm not. Anyway, be blessed, be safe, people. I will catch you guys later. And as always, if you enjoyed this, hit that thumbs up, and all the resources for things I mentioned is in the description.